It was absurd, really falling for a man because of his roses. Or maybe it wasn't absurd at all, considering how loneliness can twist your chest until even the brush of another hand feels like salvation. I never planned on this. I was just the neighbor kid, good with plants, asked to water the flowers while he was gone. But the truth? By the time he came back, it wasn't the garden that had blossomed, it was me. I still remember the first time I met Dr. Nathan Hale. He was standing on the porch of the house next door, sleeves rolled up, hair still damp from the shower, a stethoscope dangling carelessly from his neck like it belonged more to habit than duty. He looked like the kind of man who carried the weight of the world but smiled anyway. I was 23, with dirt under my fingernails, cheap sneakers, and a head full of dreams I hadn't yet lived. He was 32, polished but tired, the kind of tired that came from carrying other people's broken bodies and broken lives into his own. When he asked if I could take care of his garden while he was away on rotation 3 weeks in another state, I said yes too quickly, too eagerly. He smiled then, a soft, distracted curve of lips, and handed me the keys to his backyard. I told myself it was just a favor, but every evening, as I watered the roses and loosened the soil, I found myself watching the way the sunlight stretched across his porch, how the smell of his cologne still clung faintly to the doorknob. His absence was a kind of presence. By the time Nathan returned, his garden was wild with color roses tangled with lavender, marigolds stubbornly thriving where weeds had threatened to take over. He stepped into the backyard, eyes scanning the blooms with something like awe. And then he turned to me. "You didn't just keep it alive," he said. "You gave it more life than it's ever had." I wanted to laugh it off, to shrug and say, "It's nothing." But the way he looked at me like I was the unexpected sunlight after a long storm stole the words from my throat. And so it began. Nathan was a man who lived in fragments, early mornings at the hospital, late nights with exhaustion written in every line of his body. But in between, he lingered in the garden with me. We talked about everything and nothing: his patience, my failed attempts at art school, the way roses somehow thrived best when ignored for a little while. Sometimes his hand would brush mine as we trimmed branches, and neither of us pulled away quickly enough. Sometimes his laugh would break out, rich and sudden, and I'd think, I'd do anything just to hear that again. But love, real love, doesn't bloom without thorns. One night, he came home later than usual, his white shirt stained at the cuff, his face pale under the porch light. I was waiting there, having promised to check on the tomatoes. He looked at me as if seeing me was both relief and pain. Then he said something that cut straight through me. "I can't give you what you deserve." The words fell heavy, like stones dropped into still water. I wanted to ask, why not? But I knew. He was a doctor. His life was emergencies. 3 a.m. phone calls. Blood on his hands that soap could never quite wash away. And me? I was just a boy with a watering can, aching for something steady in a world that never stayed still. Still, I couldn't walk away. And neither could he. For weeks, we danced between closeness and distance. He would make me coffee at dawn, pressing the warm cup into my hands as if it was a promise. But by nightfall, he'd retreat, walls snapping up around him like a fortress. I started to feel like the flowers in his yard, watered one day, starved the next, yet still trying to bloom toward him. The breaking point came when I found him sitting alone in the garden past midnight, shoulders hunched, his phone glowing in his hand. He had just lost a patient. I could see it in the way his fingers trembled, the way his jaw locked as if to keep from screaming. Without thinking, I sat beside him. I didn't say, "It's not your fault." I didn't say, "You did your best." I just put my hand over his, soil-stained fingers curling over his trembling ones. And for the first time, he let himself lean into me. His forehead pressed against my shoulder, and I held him as though the simple act of holding could keep him from breaking. That night, something shifted. Nathan stopped pretending he didn't need me. I stopped pretending I didn't already belong to him. It wasn't easy. We argued, we stumbled, he pulled away more than once. But love, real love, isn't about perfection. It's about showing up, even when you're afraid. Months passed. The garden flourished, and so did we. Slowly, quietly, Nathan allowed me into his life. He brought me to the hospital cafeteria, introduced me as a friend, though his lingering glances said otherwise. He called me when his shifts ended, even if it was 4 a.m., just to hear my voice. And one evening, standing in the middle of the blooming roses I had once tended for him. He reached out, cupped my face in both hands, and kissed me. It was not gentle. It was desperate, honest, full of every unsaid word. From that moment, there was no going back. It wasn't all roses. We had nights when he shut down, when exhaustion made him sharp, when I questioned if I was strong enough to love someone whose life was never fully his own. But every time doubt crept in, I remembered that first kiss among the flowers, and the way he looked at me as if I was not just a gardener, not just a neighbor, but the piece of his life he hadn't realized was missing. And then came the day he handed me a small key. "It's for the side door," he said, eyes searching mine. "So you never have to wait outside again." It wasn't a proposal. It wasn't a promise of forever. But it was something real. A doorway into his life, into his world. Into him. Now, when I walk through his garden, I see more than flowers. I see every moment we fought for, every late-night confession, every soft laugh shared over coffee. I see the man who once believed he had nothing to give, and the boy who once thought he wasn't enough, and I see what we've built together. Love doesn't come when you're ready. It comes when you're raw, unguarded, standing in the dirt with your hands full of thorns. It comes when you're brave enough to stay, even when it hurts. And for me, it came in a garden, with a doctor who thought he was too broken to love, and with me, who learned that sometimes the most beautiful things grow out of the hardest soil. Because in the end, it wasn't just his flowers I took care of. It was him. And somehow, along the way, he took care of me too. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.